Fire Service Association of Trinidad and Tobago presents Fire Call. Wednesday mornings at 10:30 as they discuss the major issues affecting the nation's fire service and its second division officers and issues that impact public safety and security. Join the conversation and add your perspective as we seek to improve the working conditions of fire officers
his dad there is a fireman from Belmont, you know.
Fire Call. Presented by the Fire Service Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Wednesday mornings at 10:30 on Power 102 FM, empowering you.
We need to update this song for me. There is not yet for so years. When I came back, I'm in the studio and I update this song for me. Are you going to be with us? What years now? What about 30 years? I don't want to. Long time.
He just had to switch out somebody.
Yeah, just about somebody in the ring.
Same issues.
Same issues. Just the name of the other day.
Endless mosquitoes all over Cuba. The men lives under threat from dengue fever. So I say wait, they lean up, wait. Let me put the damn record straight. Take it from me in my calypso. Before you go and talk on the radio.
Alright people, and of course this is a fire call here on Power 102 FM, and of course we are joined by members of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service Association, all decked very nicely in their red. And so let me say good morning to Mr. Rafi Sood, and he will introduce all the other persons if I get the names wrong.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Sir Charles, and good morning to you, good morning to the listeners. Let me allow the comrades to introduce themselves.
Please.
So, comrade on the right.
Good morning, Sir Charles. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. I am Keon Guy, the Assistant Secretary, Northwest of the Fire Service Association.
Good to have you.
Mr. Charles, good morning to the listeners, Daddy Mohammed, Fire Service Association Assistant Secretary.
Nice.
Yeah. So Charles, well, the sun is shining today.
Thank God.
Thank God for that. I still say thank God for the blessings, although it did seem over the last 2 days that God did open the skies and rain down blessings upon us for which we couldn't contain, literally. So that we had some flooding and so on. And I just want to use this opportunity to remind the public that, safety, to be prepared in terms of these types of inclement weather we have been experiencing of late. And remind them that while traversing the highways and the byways and so on, remembering that 6 inches of water could sweep you off your feet, could take you away. And for those who may have experienced those flood waters for the first time, it's only then they realize how serious this issue of flooding is. I mean, when you see pictures and videos, when your life is flashing before your eyes, when you realize that you could be taken away, right? In just a few inches of water, a vehicle is taken away, and you could be in the vehicle. Right. So we again reminding the public, don't venture into flood waters when you in your vehicle. Don't take the chance. Wait, try to get to higher ground, get to safe ground, and wait a little bit. Allow the waters to subside, and practice the utmost safety, right? So Charles, in saying all of this, the officers, especially those officers in the Port of Spain area, the officers attached to stations in the Port of Spain area, firstly, they were out there with the minimalist of equipment, right? And doing the job. They ventured and risked themselves and their lives and so on, going into flood waters to perform rescues and so on, much of which is not always in Ryson Road, Belmont Fire Station, Mova Fire Station. These officers have been in and around Port of Spain from early this morning, assisting with washing down and cleaning down and so on. I want to commend those officers, and I want to remind those in authority of the importance of our land search and rescue unit, and hoping that we beef it up, we strengthen it up, we create policy to guide them and empower them so that they could be more effective and could utilize equipment in the interest of the public, right? The interest of the public, I think, is foremost. I want to also commend those officers in South. There's videos footage circulating on social media where the officers performed a rescue.
Yes, San Fernando Hill.
San Fernando Hill, a person, I think it is suspected that the person attempted to commit suicide or so. Guys put down an operation that was immaculate, and even though the media, I don't think, captured it, I saw the operation via the footage, and it was excellent, excellent work. I want to commend the senior officers in South who are responsible for maintaining the land search and rescue unit and keeping them operational.
Yes.
They are clearly a well-organized unit, and we would want to see the same sort of thing being organized in the other division, foothills, right? Where persons, hikers and all of that. Northern Range, you will have a lot of, I mean, Central and South, you have flooding and so on too. But Northern Range also is no less needed for the land search and rescue unit. So I'm hoping that the powers that be, Chief Fire Officer and so on, make sure that the land search and rescue unit is properly augmented and maintained in the Northern Division.
But like yesterday, and the last couple of days with the flooding that has been taking place in the army, like how was the fire service, as you mentioned, Port of Spain, you know, how were they able to deal, assist, and even some of the challenges that they probably would have faced in trying to do their job yesterday and day before yesterday?
So Charles, first and foremost, one has to remember that according to our regulations and according to our job description, fire officers must always strive to render humanitarian services, save life and property foremost. So, in other words, I'm saying that by whatever means necessary, officers will go out there and attempt to save lives, property, and render humanitarian services, and prevent, fires and emergencies, and prevent things that will endanger the public. But even though they have all that intent and they will attempt to try to mitigate against these issues, there's always the issue of lack of equipment, lack of resources, lack of training, lack of a lot of things that would really empower the fire officer to be able to put his best foot forward and really give the best service to the public. And I think that the officers are experiencing some challenges in that regard.
Always challenges.
But they are still out there. They have demonstrated they're using whatever equipment. Sometimes we use ladders for which is designed to go to elevate and go up a building. We use it in rescues. We use what we call our initiative.
Right.
And we try to utilize whatever we could and be inventive at times, all in an effort to serve the public. You know? So,
and some will say, Mr. Robinson, that we have become so good at that in the past that the stakeholders now are leaving us without the resources because we make it do pretty well with the little resources that we have. So we do it too
I
well.
don't think right now we have a single light watercraft that is properly maintained and operational.
None.
To really deal with floods.
None.
And that is very important in this kind of environment. We need to have watercraft so the officers could utilize to get to rescue persons and to perform their duties. And these are just one example of some of the resources that are needed and are not being provided.
You know, why I asked that? Because I yesterday found myself downtown trying to get into City Gate. I couldn't get across, So that's why I asked, challenges, because I don't know what other areas that you guys may have been. I didn't see them downtown yesterday, but for the time that I was downtown, it's a lot of people and we just can't get across. So what do we do in that situation? Would the fire services have been able to help us out and they have, some of the things and what they would have needed to help
You
people get
talking
there.
about thousands of commuters, such as,
Yes.
you know, we would try to rescue persons who may be in some serious problem,
Become trapped in the flood water.
trapped and so on. But to think of the fire service in terms of transporting persons who simply need to get from point A to point B, given the flood waters, is limited we would be able to do in that regard. But certainly we must be in a state of readiness for those whose lives become entrapped and endangered and so on. So Charles, I was glad to be able to expatiate on this issue of flooding and so on, given that is what occurring right now. But part of what we really wanted to discuss today, and I'm hoping that we would open the lines during the course of the show,
No problem.
and have some discussion. And Sir Charles, I mean, the pivotal issue could be tied back even to this issue we're discussing here. And really and truly, probably at this time, what is needed in the service is for the fire service to have its own ministry and probably its own fire service commission.
Definitely commission.
Because we are being neglected and ignored. I'm not blaming the chief fire officer. I know the chief fire officer, his hands may be tied at times and he would never admit it. He would never come out and openly say so. But I don't think, something in me tells me that he could only do so much because his intentions from time to time seems to be the best intentions, but his actions don't always reflect it. And I think his actions are being controlled
Well,
by
it's dependent on somebody else. Eh?
somebody else. He is receiving directives
Yeah.
and he is being neglected. Let me say that. Because, Sir Charles, we would have written the past Minister of National Security on several issues, and I would have highlighted in the last program that we are hopeful that this minister will meet with us in the shortest possible time. In fact, we have dispatched a letter requesting a meeting containing the agenda of the issues that were pending with the last minister. And we want to just briefly highlight those issues. Those issues are very urgent issues to the fire service, and it really would affect our service to the public. And what we have been experiencing over the period, Sir Charles, is that the current ministry that we are attached to seems to be really filled to capacity with the need for attention in other competing interests with the fire service. Of course, crime is the number one issue in the country. I think nobody could deny that. And those law enforcement agencies, which comprise almost all the other services in the ministry, receive probably a little more attention than the fire service. The fire service receives, in my humble view, a very, very poor level of attention and treatment of our issues. And probably we need a separate ministry or someone at a ministerial, at a cabinet level that deals specifically with the fire service.
You really argument that somebody at that level is going to show there is no need for that. Eh?
Yeah,
Well, they ain't getting that. You understand?
well then, all right, no problem. If there's no need for that, then show us, demonstrate
Yeah.
that you are adequately capable of dealing with the problem. We have no problem with you handling the whole
Right,
Ministry
if
of
you're
National
able- If
Security.
you're able to deal with everybody, if you feel you're able to do that, you have no problem with it.
No problem.
Well, I think if there is any minister that is demonstrating capable of dealing with our present minister.
Well, capability is one thing. I mean, capability is one thing. You have had persons there who I'm sure in the past would have been capable.
Demonstrated as well
But
too.
the issue here now is that this minister has been demonstrating that he is capable, but he also came with two other ministries under
Right.
his portfolio.
Yeah,
So you have communication, you have the office of the Prime Minister, and then you still have
Right.
national
So
security.
how much really can he devote?
How much?
Yeah,
can
and basically what you say, you want somebody who could give you 100%.
So Charles, if we could get 20% right now. We will be
put it out as a
20%.
group.
We will be 20%
I
more
know,
happy
I know.
because we are receiving none as it is. So Charles, I mean, we have meetings coming up with the chief fire officer where we're going to try to get some answers to certain questions with regards to resources for the fire service. And we wouldn't discuss those issues now, but it may come a time we have to discuss those issues because it seems that the powers that be are just totally ignoring the needs of the fire service, ignoring the needs of the public, right?
They are happy to let the fire service run haphazardly as it has been and ignoring our cries.
So Charles, the issues that we would have raised with the Minister of National Security. Now, I just told you about some of the resources issues, and I will go into that at another program possibly, right? It is affecting officers, it is putting officers at risk. It's no secret I've continually spoken about the shortage of breathing apparatus sets and issues that we're experiencing, and that is one of the issues. I'm not going to go into it because when we go into it, we need a whole program to discuss it.
Okay.
But conditions of fire stations and appliances are some of the issues, one of the issues that we have raised with the past Minister of National Security, and we have written to Minister Stuart Young on to have addressed, because we have put forward proposals as to how this could be, how we could work with the government, given whatever constraints, to put our best foot forward. Yes, there's video footage circulating on social media where you see an appliance it is like a convertible. It's like a convertible Porsche, one of them Ferrari, where the roof off and they're driving through and water pouring in on the officers, and
and they have to bail water out of the appliance.
Out of the appliance.
And that would be one of the challenges we encountered during the floods. So while the members of the public are under strain, fire officers also find themselves in difficulties.
Yeah, so we have a driver that truck.
Yeah.
In the flooding area.
Yes.
And it's no different all around with respect to appliances and equipment. And also conditions of fire station, as you would have highlighted, Point Fortin fire station. Sawa fire station officers are experiencing some very, very horrendous conditions where the air that they breathe is affecting the officers. And for years we have been clamoring for them to be relocated. We have received many promises, and that is not occurring. Chaguaramas fire station, Roxborough, even the officers at Scarborough fire station, which we call the capital of Tobago. The Scarborough fire station officers are in a building that is decades and decades and decades old, and so Charles, the appliances over there, the fire trucks over there, I mean, God is really a Trini, Sir Charles. I have to say that God is a Trini. So Charles, I mean, there's 4 other issues, and I can't go into every issue. But suffice it to say that the conditions of fire stations and the conditions of our appliances and equipment is in a very poor state, and this is one of the major issues we want to deal with our new Minister of National Security.
Alright, so while we continue, let me just remind people that because we're going to run and don't get the calls inside, that you can call us at 222-8255 and 612-8255. So the lines are open now.
So Charles, I just want to drive a point home clearly here. When we come and we speak about these issues, lack of equipment, condition of appliances and stations, not promotions and all these issues, they ultimately, I mean, we have to connect the dots. This is going to affect the services or the ability of the fire service to provide the services we are mandated to provide them.
Yeah.
It is not that we just sit in and just say we want this, we want that, we want next.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody who's been listening to you for the longest while, even before I started this program, I've been listening to you guys, and as I say, the things that you all have been asking for doesn't sound unreasonable. And given the fact that the fire service is an essential service, people don't see the need because nothing is happening. But the day that something happens, that is when we are going to have a whole lot of problems.
the signs are showing that, you know,
And something will happen at some point in time, so
Yeah.
we have to be prepared.
and therefore our auxiliary fire officers who, when the thing happens, as has been demonstrated, oh, we have a call there.
That's it. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, caller.
Gentlemen, good morning to Jan.
Morning, Granny
Good
Cat.
morning.
If I chance to call you because I got it in morning, I trying to get everybody eating and I can't come in. I just wanted to tell David the past to pick up something for that, you know, much the man will put that, you know, much this.
All right, okay. No problem. I will call him, Granny Kathleen, and I know he's listening also right now. So David, as you're coming up from Point, pass by my Granny Kathleen and pick up the
Some
mangoes
mango,
next
yes,
year
yes.
because
And drop some in the studio.
and come early,
next
come
week
to work
Wednesday.
early.
Between the hours at 10 to 11, drop some mangoes here.
Pass early.
Yes, sir, Charles. I just wanted to highlight that the auxiliary fire officers whom we have continually used, especially in times gone by when we had major flooding and so on, like,
They go Martin here.
and so on. These officers, we have been waiting, we have been promised that we would get a response with respect to the consideration of absorbing the officers, given that they serve for so many years.
Providing terms and conditions of employment.
I mean, you can't just come and let go. What you're going to do with them, you have to utilize them.
Let's take this quote. I just wanted to explain a little bit as to exactly what is our auxiliary fire officer for those who are
For
listening,
those,
right?
yes.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, caller.
Good morning, Sir Charles. Good morning to the gentleman there. I
Good
have a
Good
question.
morning. Good morning.
With regards to fire hydrants, who are the persons responsible for that? Because there are so many defective fire hydrants all over the place. Right? Could somebody tell us who is responsible? If the fire service themselves are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of these things?
Correct.
Okay, thanks very
Yes,
much.
fire service is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the fire hydrants, which we utilize for firefighting purposes. And the defective state of many of the fire hydrants is just a reflection of the wider fire service. So the same way that we are discussing the appliances and equipment,
Right.
we could include hydrants as part of our equipment for that
Yeah, because
purpose,
it is
and the
a serious
conditions of
factor
them
there.
is no different than what we are experiencing.
State of the fire service.
So Charles, again, the auxiliary officers, let me explain. The auxiliary fire officer is a fire officer who is functioning in the fire service on a temporary basis. He is not there the same as a regular who is in a permanent position, but he could be compared to the special reserve police officer. He could be compared to the SRP police. So we have the auxiliary fire officer, whom the fire service calls upon, especially when we are in need of augmentation. However, Sir Charles, we have auxiliary firefighters who have been functioning on a full-time basis for decades in the service. So there is a constant need for them right around the clock, 24/7. So then we are asking, these officers would have been promised to be considered for absorption into the service, given that they are trained, they have been functioned, they have all the fire kits and personal protective equipment and so on, they have the uniforms, so that it would be a saving on the public purse, given that their training would be really, really minimal, if any at all, and we could utilize them. Similarly,
Isn't there anything in the Industrial
Relation Act.
Act that prohibits something like that, or would be able to help you all to deal with that?
prohibits what?
Somebody acting in a position and not becoming permanent, drafted into the regular service after all those years.
Well, that's certainly something that we could explore. I think there is some case precedents in that regard and so on. But Sir Charles, the road we are going down is as what would have, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? In times gone by, that is the direction the government would have gone, and it would have served us well. We have had officers who came out of the auxiliary fire service, and they would have been absorbed, and they would have made their way up the echelons of the fire service.
So there is a process right there.
Yes,
So then there's no need for that. I mean, we have been promised, but I think that we more or less being placed on a back burner. And again, when you consider that the fire service is 500 officers short.
That's right.
And you have just about 100 to 150 of these auxiliary officers. You could more than afford, you could more than utilize every one of them, and still need much more than three-quarter of the shortage vacant positions to be filled still.
And these are officers that provide core functions, skill. So they work in a lot of the skill departments. We have like some of them are the fire prevention department, projects department that provide carpentry and all these different skills, and the engineering department that deals with the refurbishment and upkeep of our vehicles. So these officers are very skilled in trade-wise and in firefighting. A lot of them are health and safety trained. A lot of them have the same qualifications that we would have to attain for promotion in the fire service. And they are there serving for some of them decades, for some of them more than 10 years, 12
What
years.
is more troubling, comrade, is that they while they're serving, they are waiting and hoping to be absorbed. They are not being provided with basic regulations, basic terms and conditions of
That,
employment.
Sir Charles, is against the law.
There is
That
an
right
injustice.
there is against the law.
It's an injustice, but you know what? The Industrial Relations Act and the other acts are really, there's a serious gap, a shortfall that needs to be addressed, because these officers do not have the same opportunity via the industrial court to be able to make the representation to get redress in that regard. So they don't get sick leave, they don't get basic vacation leave, they don't get any of the normal benefits that
Tenure.
normal workers would get.
Right.
They don't get any of those things, so then they are left to the whim and the fancy of those who are their overseers.
When they retire from the service, nothing. They don't get
They just
any
go.
pension.
They just go off into the sunset with nothing, Sir Charles.
And that's why I was asking
That
about
was
the
just
law,
the next
what the
issue.
law says about it, because that is such an unjust situation that
It
is
is
taking place.
unjust. And again, we have part-time workers working full-time
Yeah, and can't
for years.
access. Yeah.
That's what we
But
have.
Sir Charles, again, the issue of the medical director and the pension for the auxiliary officers, these two issues, again, we want to delve into these issues a little more in depth, but we want a little to give the minister opportunity to discuss these issues with us, so that hopefully we could come here with some more positive news. But Sir Charles, there's one other issue that I want to utilize in the last
Yeah, right.
bit of time we have here to just make mention. I was listening to the news last night, and we were hearing during the program that a report came across that there was a key handing out ceremony for River Runs Through, where the Prime
Right.
Minister presented some keys and then Point 14 and so on. And it was mentioned that officers of the protective services, including the fire service, receive keys. I don't know where they get that information from, Sir Charles, because if that was to happen, certainly the Fire Service Association must be aware. We are the one, in collaboration with the Chief Fire Officer, who would have put forward officers who are in most pressing need for housing, who would have applied through the HDC, and therefore we must have been informed if any of those officers would have received any kind of attention whatsoever and any kind of allocation. And as far as we're concerned, nothing has happened over the last period in keeping with government policy. Remember, 10% is supposed to be allocated to the entire protective services. So even if we get 2 houses for our officers who are in most dire need, along with the police and the prisons and defense force, we must be informed.
Well, a
So
lot is being said and nothing is being done.
things are being
That is
said,
sad.
and I don't know these things to be true. And I mean, it's one thing to deny me what what is our entitlement in law and in policy, but then to make claim that you gave it to me,
Yes.
that's a slap in the face, Sir Charles. And my officers, I have been inundated with phone calls and emails from officers who have applied,
Especially
and
after that president.
even from the other services, other protective services, and certainly, Sir Charles, we cannot take that one lightly at all.
And I don't think it's something that you should, because at the end of the day, the officer who would have applied and depend on you all to see their interests, if you don't deal with it in this way, we'll feel that maybe something underhand is happening and I'm just, you know,
That is exactly it.
So the officers are
for
perceiving
transparency
That is
purposes,
exactly
you
it,
have to
Charles.
be that kind of way.
the perception
Mr. Rapi,
is
so have we
undermined.
not been asking for months for a meeting with the House Minister to chart a way forward on how to deal with these issues? We have been asking for a
Well,
meeting
boy,
with the House
I don't
Minister.
know what I hear that now because that was the same national security
Mr.
minister.
Charles
that
didn't
meet,
even want to make
is
that
now in
connection.
charge of
I
the
didn't
housing
even
and
want
they
to
want to
make
meet.
that
I wish you all the
But
best.
yes.
Guys, we
That's
have
the
to
irony we
check.
have.
So Charles, let me just, in going again, let me just commend the officers for the good work and encourage the officers to continue even in these adverse conditions, continue to try to render your best service to the public. Thanks to the public for listening. Minister Young, the Super Minister, we need that meeting urgently and we need to pay some attention to our Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. Blessed comrade.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. People, this has been Fire Call.